So, hi everyone. Welcome to our Sachem's Day celebration. My name is Heather. I'm Director of Cultural Affairs for Stockbridge Muncie Community. And today for this interview, I have the honor of being joined with our current Sachem, President Shannon Holsey. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Heather. I appreciate being here today.
Yes, thank you so much. So, I guess my first question to you is why is this day important? Why is Sachem's Day important to us?
Well, and I thought that was, thank you for the question. It's an interesting question. But it goes back to, is Sachem's Day really the recognition of a colonized holiday that recognizes presidents, US presidents, or is it more symbolism of the fortitude of past sachems and now in the modern presidency called president of the Mohican nation? But I think it lends itself more importantly to the exercise of sovereignty in that, we have a, a structure of government that's governed by a constitution. And much like the US government and the fashion constitution of the seven Iroquois nations and how that was done. And I think it lends itself to that. So, and throughout history, we've really had some phenomenal people represent our nation in different capacities. So, in my opinion, the short answer of that is just really, I think it's more of that of symbolism, because as a sachem or as a president, you perform a lot of different things. From ceremonial duties to you act in the capacity of dignitary. You also do other things that requires you representing your nation in different ways. And I think that it requires, you to be engaged in not only the confidence, and it lends itself to the confidence of your nation, allowing you to represent them in that capacity. But also, I think it's the symbolism of our sovereignty, that we have that structure, and that it even today in the 21st century it sustained itself, and that our people, we see it that way, and they had the fortitude, just like Columbus Day. We don't call it Columbus Day. It's Indigenous Peoples Day, because we recognize the colonization connotation to it, but yet there is symbolism in that.
Absolutely. And I think maybe it might be safe to say that a lot of non-native people might not know that we have our own leadership and our own government.
Exactly. And so it's always an opportunity not only to remind the world that we're a sovereign nation and we have a unique relationship with our federal government, but I think it lends itself to that, throughout history, we still act in the capacity of sovereigns.
Right, absolutely. So you've been in public service for a little while now. How did you decide that you wanted to be in public service and serve your community here?
Well, I don't think you ever really, if you're maybe some people are born that way. They always, the question is our leaders born or made? And I certainly think that they're not born. I think that public service just finds you in a way. I think in people's own right, especially in our community, it's been demonstrated to me throughout my life. Although my parents have never been titled as public servants, they're a servants to their community, and I think that it extended itself. We were taught at a very young age, my sister and I, to be in service to people and to be helpful. And throughout our history as Mohican people, we always have been. Both from people that were from our nation and other nations to non-native people. And, I really consider myself a servant leader. So it really wasn't that hard to do. It's not hard to serve people that you live among and want to find ways in order to be in service to them.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned that we've had some great leaders in Mohican Nation. What are some leaders in Mohican Nation that you admire, and why do you admire them?
Well, I know it's going to sound a little odd, but it's interesting because, these are huge shoes to fill. And I would be remiss to say that we haven't had magnificent Mohicans and sachems throughout the years. We have in every capacity. There isn't one leader that I can really speak to that didn't do something substantial and was in service to their community and brought great strength. Um, from King Solomon, of course, who was a chief sachem of the Mohicans, and he was so well respected. But I think who really resonated was, quite honestly, his son, Hendrik Appelmut, because, I mean, think about this, Heather. So, this is the 1700s, and, he was born, in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and, he was remembered for his fierce advocacy and not only protecting title to lands for us to live, but also to ensure our preservance of our nationhood. I mean, especially during a really tumultuous and perilous time. And, this man was not only like a diplomat, but he was also an attorney. He was an orator. He was just so many things. And I think he, not only did he do, he was a fierce advocate for Mohican people and our longstanding capability, quite honestly, probably still in our nation's history to be here from the reduction of removal and extinction. But he really, like I said, he dedicated his life to ensure our people's survival and preservation, through exercising those diplomatic skills.
Yeah, you've mentioned diplomatic skills and being diplomats and being statesmen, statespeople, because we are matrilineal. Do you think that seeing those, learning about those people as you grew up, do you think that might have influenced your wanting to be in service?
I mean, I've had so many phenomenal people that in our community that have mentored and that have just through their mere pure actions have really inspired me. And I think recognizing that you are one of less than probably 1,600 people in the entire world that can call themselves Mohican. And I know there's always that tongue-in-cheek last Mohican,
Yes.
sort of connotation. So, but when you really think about it and the validity of it, it really makes you kind of pause and say, wow, that's something significant and special. And there is, so our people are phenomenal, and their capabilities, the things they do. And it just inspired me. And I always strive to be better, to improve, to learn and grow. And it wasn't really hard to do that when you have so many phenomenal people to draw from and to mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel honored to work among their photos here in the library. It's really inspiring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, many of those who go into public service and become servant leaders, they have, goals or things they want to accomplish. And so my question to you is, what is one goal that you haven't achieved yet, but it's on your radar and you're getting closer to it?
Thank you for that, Heather. Yeah. Well, there's so many things. And, in this position, you judge, because we have elections, and it's for the most part, I would say that Mohican people are relatively conservative. And so you're going to have constant change. And so you have to be adaptable to that change, regardless of who that is. And you always have to build around consensus, and you always have to try to set goals and objectives, or build upon goals and objectives, both short-term and long-term, to accomplish the many needs of your citizens, whether it be things like housing, healthcare, education, just basic things, but as a government, that's what you're tasked to do, and that's your responsibility. But beyond that, I think that our future really lies with our youth, with our children. And so as now I'm going on my third year in serving in the capacity of president of Great Lakes Intertribal Council, and I'd served previous to that as an officer as well. There was a plan that was conceptualized of an adolescent wellness in treatment facility that was culturally centric, which I just love the idea of bringing holistic healing and cultural healing and joined with Western healing to our youth, because it's got to be really difficult to be a young person right now, especially, considering all the challenges that we're all facing. But I know that for Indigenous communities, especially Native communities, things like opioid endemic and suicide, depression, and mental health are huge, huge issues, and sometimes taboo issues that we just as Indigenous people aren't prepared or don't have the skill set to discuss or provide the necessary resources. So this idea was built out of Great Lakes Intertribal Council over 20 years ago. So can you imagine how many of our sachems, our presidents, have been involved over the years with this, including the other 10 tribal nations of Wisconsin?
Yeah.
So when I joined Great Lakes Intertribal Council, I tasked myself, I promised myself that that's something that Stockbridge would take the lead in finding a way to come to that. So I'm very happy to report, I'm very humbled to report that we're really starting to move and build momentum from a feasibility study, a feasibility plan and a study plan that had been done in the previous years to now the actual architectural and engineering plans that are going to move forward very soon. And then the infrastructure of it. It's slated to be, in a central location, most likely in Marathon County, that it's localized, that it will be able to serve all 11 tribal nations youth, but also have the availability and accessibility to healthcare providers, and also most importantly, to have the support of Native families to be able to go through that necessary healing with their child. And I think that's so critical, because if everything that we don't do isn't geared towards our future generations, then I really don't know what we're doing. If we can't secure and find that necessary healing and support system for them to move forward, then I think we're all in trouble. So I think for me, that is one of the most important things, that among many, and I won't diminish the other significant goals, but that is one that's very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, no, and that's going to be awesome. That's going to serve and help so many people. So we hope that goal keeps getting closer for you to finish.
Thank
And
you.
then, yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that great work. And finally, I think every person in a position of leadership thinks about the legacy that they're going to leave behind once they go, at the federal level, once they go into private life, or once they go back into the community. So, what do you hope the legacy is that you leave when you leave office?
Well, I mean, it's such a loaded question, Heather.
I know.
but I hope the legacy is that I think for every president or sachem, you always want to leave your nation a better place than you found it. And not to suggest that there was anything wrong with the way you found it, but it's always capacity building. It's always pushing, and it's always like the balance, right? It's lending what works and what needs to be redeveloped or redeveloped and considered, because there's always adaptability. I think when you think about this pandemic, like, no one could have possibly been prepared for this. But when you think about Indigenous communities and who responded best to it, it was Indigenous communities, because we were extremely resilient and adaptable. So, I think for me, I know it sounds so simplistic, but the fact that we responded the way we did, and the things that happened the way they did, I'm incredibly proud of both my past and current tribal council that has navigated it the way that they have, with always that sense of community, with always that sense of care for others, with always putting the needs of our people first, in spite of the challenges that you have with maintaining, as our tribal nation is one of the largest, if not the largest employer in our county, maintaining that revenue stream that's necessary for us to operate and provide the necessary services and opportunities and employment for people. But you're still balancing it where we have to keep people safe, and we have to get through this. And we're nowhere near through this. But I'm really, we got through it. And I think we've collectively gotten through it mindfully, gracefully, and strategically. And we've always, at the heart of everything we do, we put our people first. And I hope that people recognize that the work that I've done with councils throughout the years, that we've always put people first.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great legacy. It's a legacy to have. And I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day, I know, to chat with us. And for those out there who are watching this, if you want to learn more about who Mohican Nation is or who our leaders are, you can visit mohican.com, Cultural Affairs Department, and follow us there, and always learn more. And we thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much, President Holsey.
Thank you, and be well, everybody, and continue to be safe. We're thinking of you, and much love.